Is Rebecca Dangor on twice? Oh, no, is she?
She was just merging her phone and her
Okay.
her video. So it's 5 o'clock, but
Okay.
I see there's one other person who's just signed in on the form.
Okay.
So you may want to give it a moment.
Okay. Is it a board member?
It was Russell. Yeah.
Oh, Russell. Okay. I think he's a board member.
He counts.
Russell, you here?
No, not yet. All right. Russell's here. There's nobody else signing in, so.
Welcome to the Budget Committee meeting, and welcome to Felice as the new co-chair. And I just want to say, I mentioned it at the beginning before everybody was on, because we're going to discuss personnel costs at one point. We will close it then to the public, and we'll go into a different room where will handle that, how we do that. But even though it's on the screen, the personnel, people look at the budget, they'll see everybody's salary, but that happened. I have a couple of questions and then I'll throw it to everybody else. Is there anything different because of the pandemic this year? I mean, there's people, was Tuck's contract signed? Is that money going to roll over? Usually it doesn't from year to year, but is it going to roll over, Will?
So Tuck has not signed his contract. I did unmute Russell if he wants to clarify, because he was the last person to speak to Tuck. But if you prefer, I'm happy to answer Russell.
I don't care.
Yeah, well, my understanding, so in terms of the money, and Will, I think, actually knows more about the money rolling over. My understanding is that it does. In terms of the
money doesn't roll over from this year to next year.
We can't roll it over. Okay, well, that's why we've been trying to get it signed anyway before the end of the fiscal year. So yeah, the latest with Tuck is we sent him a version that I think addresses the concerns that he had raised, and he is out of town this week, but I think he'll be able to look at it basically on Monday and hopefully sign it then.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And then as far as the pandemic, though, you asked what does the pandemic reflect on our budget? On this year's budget, we did have to identify savings. We were actually asked to identify savings over this fiscal year and next fiscal year. All community boards were asked to do that. If we had enough leftover budget, which we were going to have because we weren't actually able to hire for most of the year to fill our two other positions, we were actually able to identify all of those savings in this fiscal year. So the budget that I sent over to the two of you and Russell, that I believe you guys have shared, that actually reflects the budget savings that we had to identify that OMB took out of our budget.
Okay.
So nothing in next fiscal year, which is what you're planning to look at. Nothing in next fiscal year is going to reflect any change because of the pandemic. It is going to look like our standard pre-pandemic budget.
Okay. And we don't know if during the year, depending what happens with the economy and what happens with the city coming back, if there's going to be further changes.
Basically, I would say that OMB has, because of the federal relief bills, they have given us the go-ahead to start hiring, the go-ahead that our budget should not be changing going forward. But obviously, every
Yeah.
year, the next fiscal year is not really set in stone until the mayor and the city council agree on a budget.
Okay, and the only other question I have before I go to anyone else with questions, is the office open now? Because I thought city workers went back. Is it people going back to the office at this point?
So the mayoral edict, I would call it, for lack of better words, was that mayoral city agencies would start transitioning to returning to the office on, I think, May 1st or generally the beginning of May. We're not a mayoral city agency, so therefore the rules that the mayor set out did not actually apply to us. We get to work with our own agency and with the borough president's office on reopening at our own pace. So over the last 2 Fridays, I've gone into the office to start processing mail, cleaning everything up, getting everything. Our phones weren't working correctly. Our Xerox machine isn't working correctly. I'll be back on this Friday to meet with the Xerox repairman and get the.
You actually have a Xerox machine?
Yeah, we bought a color Xerox machine 2 fiscal years ago,
Okay.
which was something we all discussed, but at the time. But yeah, it comes with a maintenance plan, and that they'll come out and do that.
Russell, do you have anything to add about that? About the opening of the office?
Nope.
No. Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any specific questions about the budget?
So Michelle and Elaine have their hands up, and so does Rebecca Dangor.
Okay, Elaine? I don't know.
Michelle had her hand up first.
Oh, okay, Michelle.
Okay, thank you. No, I wondered if you can bring us up to date. This is the first time I've heard the name Tuck, and I wonder what position, if you can sort of give us a little background and bring us up to date as to what's going on in the office.
You want me to?
For a long time, yeah.
Yeah, this is, well, I'll speak to this a little bit, and I guess, Barbara, maybe you can add additional detail. But basically, if you may remember, Michelle, there was a vote at the end of last year to spend money to hire an architect to assist with our application for the 210 height limit that's being made to city planning. And so we need to have an architect to actually be able to advance the application and take it to the next stage. And we had gotten money from council members earmarked to help us with this. So the original plan that we voted on at the end of last year was to spend $25,000 to hire an architect, and the name of the architect is Tuck Edelstein. So he's the person, there was a bidding process. He's the person that we decided to hire, and the board voted on that. And in the intervening period, we've been working out the details of the contract because of the size of the contract, because it's over a certain threshold, or the original proposed version was over a certain threshold. It required us to go through a sort of more extensive version of city procurement processes than we typically do. And that kind of bogged things down. And we finally came to the end of that process a few weeks ago, but then we ran into an issue where the architect didn't want to sign the city approved version, and our ability, because it's a city, it's this higher level contract, we didn't really have the ability to revise it to accommodate him. So now we're going to do a slightly lower amount of $20,000, and that allows us a little bit more flexibility in how we draft it. And so I think that's going to allow us to finally have the thing signed so that he can proceed with the work.
Well, that's very good. So he'll be on board
That's
with
the goal, yeah.
with the new contract.
Yes,
even though it's less money, etc.
Exactly.
Okay.
He was supposed to be on board. It got complicated, Michelle, I think. When that one community board, I think, what I heard rumors in the back, when one community board bought that car, they started checking everything very carefully.
Okay, well, I'm glad we've got somebody. And so he'll be due to start immediately pending the signing.
He's been on, and he's really been working on it. And then he had to stop for a while, but he's been on board a while.
Oh, good. All right. And is he organizing how this presentation is going to be made? In other words, at what point are we?
I don't know the specific details of the work that he's done or been doing. I mean, I think he hasn't done a whole lot yet, given that we haven't had a signed contract. But I do think, given that he was involved in earlier phases of the application, I think he's certainly familiar with the issues, and he's, going to be able to hit the ground running as soon as we have a signed contract.
That's great. Who will he report to? Is this to the zoning committee, to you, Russell, to who?
Under the contract, I think he reports to me and Will, although I think it's in consultation with the zoning committee.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's good news.
Elaine, do you know how much work he's done so far?
There's been work done on the pre-application, and what will be coming in now is, since there was a change in scope, because it's just not the 210 height limits, the special districts also. So that he'll be moving on, and has been doing some of the research, and hopefully in a week or so, everything is signed and he can move forward. It's been a painful process for everyone involved. I have to tell you, since I did a lot of that work, I cannot believe, that we've almost gone a year with not too much work and a lot of pressure from the community. But it will be ready, within a period of time to submit the application. And then there's a whole process of going through the EIS and all that, but we'll get that going. And then the goal, the need will be to hire consultants who can help with the entire process of the DIS. And some of us are familiar with the process, and we'll see what we can do to add to it. But we're going to need some experts to help with some of the material we need for that application.
Okay, and I can keep your hand up once you go, whatever you comments or questions you had.
Yeah, the question I had, are we on the 21 budget, or have you moved off that? Which fiscal year are we talking about?
I think both of them, really.
Well, the current fiscal year is coming to an end, right, at the end of.
It's over
Right,
June.
but are there funds available that we need to look at reallocating before the end of the fiscal year? Are there needs within the department that might allow for some OTPS or other expenditures? And the other question I had is, where is beta in the budget? I didn't see it there. And I don't see it for next year either. So I just wanted to know about that also.
Will, can you talk about the money you moved over? I know you moved money over in OTPS. Can you?
Yeah, I'll respond. So right now, we no longer have a contract with Beta NYC. What happened was very similar to what Russell was describing. There are procurement rules for all city agencies. Number one, only people who can actually enter into any agreements for the city agency are myself and Russell, the chair of the board. No board member can enter into an agreement with like spending city agency money, other than the two of us. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Number two, as Beta NYC hit their $20,000 micro purchase limit, we actually couldn't continue to use their services for the temp services that we had been supplied by Beta NYC over the last year while we were unable to hire. Essentially what happened, Murat, who was the Beta NYC employee who had been working with our board, is now his own vendor for the city of New York, and has taken on a slightly different role, but till the end of the fiscal year, we'll continue to be doing some of the similar services that he was doing for us. Usually street life and our applications and our web services.
Is there a job description? Is there a job description for what he's supposed to be doing?
He signed a contract that
did the board approve that?
It's not a large contract. You don't have to approve all purchases. But Russell did approve it.
Russell approved it.
We're talking
it's
a couple.
It's basically prorated for, what is it, like a month or something like that, basically to have him continue to do the duties that he's already doing.
Until June 30th, yeah. At the same rate that was approved by the board for Beta NYC.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not a substantively in any way different contract.
Yeah, it was just a short-term extension so we can keep him on till we are.
So, and as far as the rest of the FY21 fiscal budget, Elaine, you were actually just in my spreadsheet, so I assume you saw it. So you'll see that there, and I've sent this to Felice and to Barbara and to Russell. And if anybody else would like to see it, I can share it with them. But there is an uncommitted balance, or sorry, there's a uncommitted PS balance that is not going to go to staff salary and could still be moved over to PS budget of $23,906. That is PS budget that could be moved to OTPS. Sorry, and I'll spell that out for people if this is one of your first budget meetings. PS stands for personnel services, and OTPS other than personnel services. That's for anything like buying paper, buying new computers, buying, what have you. And it also includes if we, do a contract with a vendor like Tuck or like Murat or Beta NYC for any services. So that is a chunk of money that would have to be turned back over to the city at the end of the fiscal year that can still be moved over. So there is plenty of money if there are items that people would identify as important for the board.
Well, we used to spend it on, we used to fill up the postage meter. We used to spend it on paper. We really never have tried, we have tried not to turn money back because we need it. So we should find a way to spend it. I mean, the supplies.
Yeah. Every year for the last 7 fiscal years, we have turned money back over to the city.
We shouldn't be turning money.
Are you saying we can roll over the 20?
No, we cannot.
We can't roll
None of
over.
it can be rolled over to the next year.
No.
So do you need computers or anything?
No, we just bought
Laptops?
new computers and laptops. In theory, if we're going to do virtual meetings, we may want to invest in a laptop or 2. And I would also suggest, I've talked to Russell about this. There are some cameras that other boards have bought that you sit in the middle of a table and they are integrated with Zoom, so that if we're doing some sort of hybrid meeting, you could have this camera that would be plugged into a laptop that one of our staff members would have, and that would, it literally spins around and looks at the person who's speaking.
Wow.
And they're about $1,000 a piece. They're not,
Are we on tablets?
Sounds good.
Sorry to go out of turn, but yeah, that does sound good. But what's our tablet situation like? Do we have spare tablets?
we have 54 tablets, so we do technically have a couple of spares. I'll admit that is one of the things that's going to be towards the last of the check-ins of like how things are running in the office, is like turning all those tablets on. They're only really about 1.5 years old, so I wouldn't anticipate them having any major problems with the use that we would like to use them for.
If we were to hire somebody this year, we wouldn't spend the full dollar amount, but would that be committed that would cover us?
So this is, I would want to get an answer from OMB that's very specific on this. Every year we have, we can only roll $50,000 over from PS to OTPS, because we've technically had to roll over a bunch of that money for paying for temp services with Beta NYC. And Michelle had that intern we paid, and there are a couple other projects that we had to pay for. We bought Adobe for all of our laptops. We've moved $26,000 over from PS to OTPS already. So when I gave you that number of $23,906, that is really the amount difference between 50,000 and what we've already moved over. So it's not the full extent of our PS budget, because if we don't spend all of our PS budget, you just actually cannot move it all over to OTPS.
Even this year when things are so different because of.
Yeah.
Okay, but we should, if anything we can move over, we should do it.
We can, yeah.
I mean,
So,
yeah.
What besides the camera, tripods?
They wouldn't be on tripods. They'd have to sit on a table. But I would think a couple. Really, if we're looking at things like that. I would look at maybe a couple of computers to go with them so that that are lightweight and strong, so that they could be carried by staff members to the meetings, and maybe like a couple extension cords so that like we make sure we have a full thing. So even there, you're talking maybe $5,000.
What? I forgot what I was going to say.
And we do actually have hands up too from other
What about,
folks.
when we had the last Zoom meeting, we couldn't.
Barbara,
lost
you cut out. Elaine, was there anything else? Because we do have other hands up, and I want to.
Oh, I thought we were doing a round table on this and having a discussion. Well, there are other questions I have on other parts of the agenda, but I think that it's important we figure out how to spend this money, that it doesn't then go back to the city. And I think what Barbara might have been asking is there a way we could put money into Zoom so that we're not restricted on, say, that 300
Yeah, that's what I
person? That's what I thought you were going for. I could hear it in the voice that we, contract with Zoom for more space.
Yeah, essentially our contract with Zoom, our contract is actually a contract that the borough president's office provides us. They have the highest tier essentially of Zoom that we can get. Yeah, because they actually have 20 different licenses. So they have 12 for each board, 1 for each board. And then, they have several licenses for the BP's office. Their caliber of, if we were to buy it individually, would cost significantly more than just to get back to what we have. Because what we actually get, and you'll see it at the bottom of your screen, is the like live reader, the closed captioning. That is not something that comes with any standard Zoom plan, and we actually should have that as like a ADA accessibility. And so to get up to the tier where we could do the live streaming, that as many people into our Zoom rooms, we would actually need to go. It would be an astronomical fee, because the economy of scale of having it through the BP's office and having 20 different licenses that are all collectively, at a higher tier.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca had a hand up, I think.
She does.
Hi, yeah, I have a couple. Oh, sorry, well, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, and then Barbara Rudder also has her hand up.
I know, I see that now.
Before I go, I've been having internet problems, so that's why I'm leaving my video off. The first thing I just want to make sure everyone knows is that our last internal budget meeting was actually 2 years ago. We didn't have one during COVID, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear, especially when we're talking about like the Tuck contract, et cetera. The second is I just want to echo what Bill said. I think we should absolutely invest in those cameras. I mean, the reason we can do virtual meetings right now is because of a temporary suspension to the open meetings law. If that goes away, or it's not changed so that we could do a hybrid, we will go back to full person meetings. But I think we can all agree how important it's been to all of our committee meetings, not just the full board meeting, to be streamed and accessible on YouTube. So I think this would be a great investment, especially for the future, even when things do go back to in person. And on that note, maybe I don't know how our microphones are. I know we talked about that in 2019. If we have, if we have leftover and there need, another, I feel like hopefully the amount of committee meetings that we'll have when we go back to person will remain as high, and it's likely that maybe there'll be multiple meetings in a night in person, when Will doesn't have to be there, at each meeting to stream. So that's another thing. And would the need for, this is also Will question, if we're live streaming the meetings and they're in person and they're on YouTube, do we still have to record them separately with a tape recorder, or does that count?
As long as we could retain a recording of it, which if we were still using basically Zoom as a engine to do live streaming, which would probably be like one of the ideal ways to do it, especially if you're not planning a hybrid model. You could retain like a low level license of Zoom for a couple $100, and you would just use that as your like pathway to streaming, because the cameras actually integrate into Zoom, so it'd actually probably be pretty easy to do. It would actually still record it, and we would just save that recording off of that computer onto our cloud.
Okay.
I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but that's probably what I would suggest.
I want to make sure if like we have leftover and we would still need recorders even if we went in the camera route in the future. That was just an idea, but I prefer the camera and giving more people access to our meetings.
Yeah, I actually did buy a lot of like the digital recorders during the last fiscal year, or not the last one, but the prior one. So we have about 12 of those now.
Remember, we have to have some more training in how you use them. People have a hard time. I know
Well, we will definitely need a lot of reminder sessions of like how to use some of the stuff of being in person.
Yeah, I think Will and I talked about that, especially with new board members. Whenever we find out who they are, we'll do all of that.
Yeah, I think we need
but
that.
Great.
Confused on it. Some people have recorded when they get home instead of recording the meetings. I mean, it somehow I know I do, and a lot of people have a hard time with the recordings. Okay, Barbara Rudder.
Barbara, you can unmute. Barbara, you're on. Barbara Rudder. There you go. Oh, you just muted yourself again. Try that again. You're good now. Nope. Barbara, you're muted. Just click it once.
I do.
There you go. You're good. You're good. Nope.
Am I good or not?
You're good. You're good. You're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have to click it. You know, I have a few things. First of all, I agree with Rebecca. I have a couple of questions. I think there's three things. Are we going to stay on Zoom? Are we going to have hybrid? Or are we going to be all in person? Could you use Zoom with, you said with hybrid, you could use Zoom. What about if we're in person? What I like better than the digital recorders, and I agree with Barbara, I always have a tough time with it. So I take it home. By the time I send it to you or get to it, it's not on the, I love the fact that immediately, if I miss a meeting, the next day I could go on and see the meeting. And you don't do that with the digital recorders. Is there any way we can do that? And I was thinking one way of spending money is a camera that would actually go right on to YouTube. I'm not sure what to do, but something that would record on YouTube and maybe get on. Is that possible?
The only thing I've seen that other boards and other folks have recommended was that we would use is that Oculus camera. I need to find Russell, if you can find that email I sent to you, would you bump it in my inbox? But because I've been searching for it. This camera, it ties into a computer, and it would tie into like you would need a program like Zoom to be using it. There are probably other programs that we could find.
Is Zoom the only type of program like it? And there must be
No, you could probably use like
WebEx does it.
Yeah, you could probably use WebEx. You could probably use Teams. You could probably use any of those sorts of Google Meet. Yeah. You know, Zoom was the one that the BP's office chose, and I'm very thankful for it. It does seem to be the most user-friendly of all of the ones. We actually do have an account with WebEx that do it. The agency who handles most of our tech services needs, they bought everybody or had one for everybody. They're just, it's not as, it's user-friendly. But
yeah. So in other words, just to cut to it, if we can have some technology, some way that when we finally, I hope we come back face to face, quite truthfully, when we finally come back face to face, that will give us that same technology. That was one of the big pluses I think that we got, was to have that. It's also, unlike the recorder, it was very hard to say, well, I know I want to go to a certain person, where here it was so easy. You just sort of scroll and you see the person's face and you know where to go to. It made writing minutes so much easier if you were able to do it. So that's one suggestion. I have a couple
Totally agree.
I have a couple of other things. I've only been on the board 11 or 12 years. So Barbara, Michelle, you've been on much more, and Elaine, you've been on much longer. So you may disagree with me. Over my years, and I have not gone to every budget committee, first of all, I don't remember spending money on all of these consultants that we've suddenly had. And I do feel there wasn't the transparency. There wasn't really the discussion with it. I remember at one meeting, there was the discussion. It wasn't the discussion of the 25,000 caused a whole new series of problems. And what I remember each year, and maybe, Will, you should close your ears, is that we discussed, I don't know if it was raises or bonuses. I'm not sure what the word is for the staff. It was raises, not bonuses. And then we talked about it. We usually gave it. I have to say this year, I think it would be hard to disagree that our staff went beyond anything, that were just amazing.
We have to close, if we're going to talk about personnel, we have to close it to the public. So I don't know if anybody's on from the public.
Okay. Well, not whether we should give, but that was something that went through.
Yeah,
I hope that if we do have consultants or something, it's a little bit more transparent what they're doing. I still don't understand. Is this $20,000 a one-time? Is it a yearly fee? Have we paid beforehand?
No, we can't pay beforehand. They have to do the work.
No, but I mean, have we paid in previous years for work that went on?
He started off doing the 210. That was what he did, the pre-certification. He worked on that.
Yeah, we hired him in the past, and then we're hiring him again for a new segment of the project.
So this would be an additional 20,000?
I don't know what you mean additional. Like this
we
is
already
the same,
hired him and paid 20,000 already.
This is the 20,000 that we approved at the end of last year. This is that same contract that we approved at the end of last year. Before this, I mean, I think you're going now back to like 2017 or something like that. We had hired him, and people can correct me if I have that wrong, but we had paid him previously a few years ago for an earlier phase. Elaine, I guess, wants to correct me, but anyway, this is the same thing we're talking about.
I don't know if others on the board knew it. Maybe the zoning committee knew about it, but I'll go to some zoning meetings. Okay. I would just, I try to be as up to date, but I think that the full board, I don't think I was alone in sort of not knowing what was going on.
Michelle, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of what we could use that money for, Will and I had talked about this, but I don't know if we ever got it. Does the office have scanners?
In what way?
Where we can scan documents?
Yeah. The big Xerox machine I mentioned.
Is that a scanner now?
Yeah, it scans in color. It's like
Good, okay.
When I went to the office on Friday, I scanned a lot of pieces of mail for Saida to file.
Because we didn't have that. And the other thing is, does it have the capability of printing on long paper?
It does, yeah. So part of the reason I went two Fridays ago is Alita wanted flyers for the art show.
Okay, it's long paper. That's good. So this updated machinery has all this stuff that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it's still a little problem for me. We've talked about it, and I know, and that's the computer, the calendar format. And we've talked about it, and we weren't totally happy with our original website designer as to how that calendar comes out and how efficiently we can print it, and can we get it up on page.
You put it up a few times.
We did, and Barbara, you did as well. You and I were having the same concerns.
Problem, yep.
And now you can use the garbage can icon, to delete a lot of what's on the main page to try to get it onto one page. But it just seems to me that the design is still not quite right. The calendar itself never can print on one page anymore. That's always 2 or 3 pages. And then each of the committee meetings and the agenda, there's a lot of maneuvering before you can get it to print on one page. In other words, you have to go through each page and delete. But if you look at it on the cover page of each committee where they talk about the agenda, there's a lot of repetition that's just not needed. Like it'll say where the meeting is, or at one point, or it'll say the heading of the committee meeting.
Michelle, this is an aesthetics conversation though. Like what?
So I'm wondering, what can we do to clean that up? It's still an issue.
Yeah, it is an issue.
You could pay for a brand new website. WordPress is, so our website is created through WordPress. WordPress is a type of website builder that you can modulate and modify, but essentially it does have certain plugins that you can use, certain, like the calendar on our home screen, right? I want them to show you the meetings that are taking place. Just pretend this is the 30th of the month. There's a meeting on the 30th and a meeting on the 31st. It previews the meeting on the 30th and the 31st. Even if you have a meeting on the 1st, it won't preview that. It's just the technology doesn't want to do it. And so, you know, we could spend, I think CB6 just spent about $45,000 on a new website. We could do that if you really think that that's necessary. I think that
would be overkill. It's the previewing that's not of concern to me. It's the repetition. In other words, we have a lot of repetition on a page, and that makes the agenda more often than not 2 pages, unless each individual person sits down and erases what's repetitious. So it doesn't seem to me that we have to spend $45,000 for a new website to correct that, but I'm not savvy enough to know how to permanently correct it. I have a WordPress site too, for Historic Park Avenue, but it's much simpler and it doesn't require the kind of, you know, activity that you put on it. But it just seems to me that there should be a way, like if it says the location, it doesn't have to say it in 2 places. Isn't there a way to permanently?
So I think what you're talking about is one time it says the location is where I put it in the event detail. So I manually enter it in, you know, with the date and whatever, right? And then I also, because WordPress is a calendar format, I also then enter the date at a different place. So then it does show up at the top. You know, if you click the little calendar thing, it says the date and the time. There's also Google Maps, like quick link, that if, you know, we're meeting at 505 Park Avenue, I click the location as 505 Park Avenue. If you remember when we used to have physical locations, it would preview the Google Maps location of it, and, you know, it'd say 505 Park Avenue. Of course, I could have left that out of the event detail. It could have saved that repetition, but I
think it's worth leaving it out, Will, because it's a neighborhood. I don't think we need to print a full map of where, if the meeting is at, the synagogue or the church, or if it's at the blood center or wherever it is. I don't think we need a full map to show somebody where 67th Street is. Nobody's coming from an outer borough, really. I just think it's a big waste. It's repetitious, and it would be much more efficient to have everything on one page. I don't think you need a map. It's all local people. How much guidance do they need, you know, to get to First Avenue and 84th Street? I agree.
if people are on the community board, they should know how to get to.
Well, it's for the public. It's not for the community board members.
But even the public are mainly within the district of community board aid. And if we have an occasional consultant who comes from outside the district, if they really needed additional direction, they could call the office. But I would submit that that's probably never true. So can we try that for a month or two? See if you have any.
I'll take it back to the people who maintain our website and see what they can do. That's all I can promise. And I think they've already looked at it and that it's not really something that's easily changed. But
they can't undo the Google Maps.
I'll take it. All I can tell you is I'll take it back to Pronto, who maintains our website. And if it is something that the vast majority of the board wants to see go away, we can see if we can make it go away. But I don't want to take something away that is actually an access point for the public unless the board overwhelmingly wants me to take something away from the public.
How much access, how much monitoring does that group do, Pronto? Daily, weekly, monthly?
If I ask them to work on something, it goes to an engineer. It could take a week, it could take a day, depending on the severity of the problem. You know, recently our archives got out of order. They just were jumbled up. You know, 2002 was after 2005. You know, it didn't make any sense. And so it took them about a week. They figured out the source of that problem. It was corrupted whatever file and fixed it, and now it's back up.
Are they supposed to give us a certain amount of time each week or each month? I mean,
it's not that sort of a they do the general maintenance on the website that, you know, I don't ever have to ask for. They, you know, will make sure everything's, all the drivers and whatever else around. I'll admit that I am not the tech savviest person here, but they maintain all the back end stuff. And then they are always on call for troubleshooting. So when, you know, the Facebook disappears off of our homepage, which happened recently, when, you know, the archives get out of order, when, you know, I need a new page built because I can't build new pages. I can build events. I can, you know, when the homepage needs to be redesigned. Alita wanted a different photo to appear first in the photo reel. You know, I reach out to them. I create a trouble ticket, and they are there, you know, within hours to start responding. And that's just a general maintenance cost that we pay every month.
So basically, they respond to your requests. They don't do anything.
I didn't say that. Actually, I actively said the opposite. They do all the back end work.
No, I know.
Without telling me, and I don't have to deal with that.
No, I get that they do that maintenance, but when there's a project or something, they don't, there's no ingenuity in the sense that they don't propose changes or anything like that.
No.
If a project comes up, it would come from you to ask them about it, etc.
They would do that. That's
okay.
Felice, you were saying something.
Oh, just that I clicked on the Google Map feature on the website. It doesn't go anywhere. It just goes back to the budget committee. So
yeah, if you go to a previous meeting from back in like 2019, you would see it on those calendar items.
No, because there's no place where sitting at home. Okay.
Yep, that's
Makes
exactly
sense.
why.
I think we know how to get to our homes. I'm not sure though anymore. Okay,
Yep,
Elaine,
no, that's obvious. Okay.
Elaine, you had your hand up. Elaine?
Right. I have two comments. One, maybe because we have the money, we'll meet with a consultant around web pages and look at options and what's available. And, you know, maybe we're not in the right company. I don't know. It's not my area, but that latitude to have a discussion and bring somebody on that can advise prior to the end of the fiscal year and spend the money. The other piece, it's up to you all, but I'm just thinking, we're sitting here and I don't think many of us are experts in this area, and why not pull somebody in? The other thing I wanted to comment on was the contract with Tuck. Let me be clear, and it was clear to the board. when Jim Kleins was chair, this is when it started. Ben Kalos allocated out of discretionary funds a restricted budget amount to hire someone to work on the 210, which is now the 210 special districts. That money was discussed with the board. It was not part of the community board budget. It was an allocation from his discretionary. The amount now that's there is again restricted from Ben Kalos to work on the 210. Now it will be the special district. And there was an allocation from the budget of the board. All of that was discussed and approved. Full discussion. I don't know what month it was, to tell you the truth, but it was quite a while ago. And I can remember, which was very interesting, that David Halpern had supported, as did the full board, the hiring of Tuck because he knew Tuck from years ago working together or something, okay? There is a history, Barbara. It was fully discussed all along, and the board approved that resolution that covered the income. There was a full RFP and a whole piece that went on that a number of us as volunteers spent many hours, days, months on. So there was been always full transparency. And maybe Will, if you could down the road find, I think it was December where we approved it. I don't remember. Okay. I don't want to waste our time. And I've got about 15 more minutes before I have to go. But please, there was absolute transparency and always has been.
It was, I think, Rebecca, you had your hand up?
You did, yeah. Rebecca?
Rebecca, and I think you just.
I think it got lowered.
Right. So, yeah, it got lowered because I was trying to respond to like put a reaction next to my hand being raised to answer Michelle's question. I think the problem you're having is you're talking about when you print the agenda, since we're not in person and, we're not getting the hard copies. And what we can do is, like, I know Barbara and I have asked Will to send us a PDF copy that doesn't have that. We can do that for every meeting and have it posted as a PDF underneath agenda. And that way we can keep the map on the website, but you can still have access to a paper copy that would print on one thing. The reason why we need it in multiple places, so we couldn't only use the map and get rid of the other, is because we need to have the location on the agenda, like, clearly, because it's a community board meeting. So that's that part. If that helps create your problem, fix your problem, I think that's an easy solution.
It is, and we can do that.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful.
And two other things. The second is just a small budgetary question. The Adobe, that's a yearly cost, right? Because
no.
I pay for Adobe on my own. So you got an actual, instead of the cloud, the program.
You sound like my partner who was complaining that artists don't get this option. But yes, the city gets an option
really
to buy
expensive for me.
Yeah. The city gets an option to buy it outright, and so we don't have to pay a yearly fee for Adobe. Same is true for like Microsoft Word.
Oh, okay.
We don't pay for that yearly, even though we do actually have access to Office 365.
Okay, Barbara.
And then
sorry. I'm sorry.
The last thing is that I hope it was clear when I first spoke that I was talking about for when we go back to full person, maintaining, the YouTube and live streaming. And I agree. If we go back and the borough president's office does not keep the Zoom subscription, since again, we can't do hybrids unless they change the open meetings law, which I don't think is going to happen. We could probably fit into our budget a small, inexpensive Zoom subscription to be able to use the cameras continuously, correct?
We certainly could, yeah. And other boards have also been trying to figure out, and Russell can speak to this because I think it was part of like the
Borough board.
Borough board. Other boards have been figuring out how they can adapt if the BP's office does withdraw that money. There was a theoretical moment where they were going to withdraw that money when we actually hit 1 year of Zoom meetings, because that's when their contract would have initially run out. But eventually they opted to buy the full purchase again, and we will and actually that is the reason why we weren't able to just like sort of randomly upgrade, because they're already the ones who upgraded, and they're at the top of that $19,999 before they would have to go into a small purchase, and they would have to, you know, do the whole contract that takes about a year, and even for the BP's office it takes about a year.
Yeah, but oh, sorry, Russell, you go ahead.
Did you? I mean, I was just going to talk more about the Zoom thing if you wanted to know more.
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. So I mean, as Will said, there was discussion about what we were going to do in the event that the borough president wasn't going to continue to pay for a sort of larger level account for all the boards collectively, and ultimately, it's you know, it didn't come about a couple months ago when this was first raised. But I do think this is, I don't know if we're still going to need Zoom or to what extent, you know, later on, but they are not going to pay for the same, or their current plan is not to re-up the same account level when the current year subscription expires. I mean, my preference, and this is what I told them, was, you know, it's a lot more cost efficient if they continue to have the same subscription and the different community boards in Manhattan just figure out a way to reimburse them or somehow share the cost among the 12 of us. I mean, essentially, it's a lot cheaper for us to pay 1/12 of the cost of, you know, or for each community board to pay 1/12 of the cost, there are 12 in Manhattan, of what the borough president's office is currently spending to have the level of services that we have through Zoom, than it would be for us separately, or each borough or each community board separately, to get those services on our own. It's just much, much more expensive sort of per board to do it in the latter way. And so my preference, and I think it should be possible, and I've corresponded with them about it, although we haven't talked recently, is to do it that way and just keep what we have and allow us to spend 1/12 of the, you know, have the 1/12 of the budget come out of our budget as Community Board 8. But I don't know how it's ultimately going to shake out. And again, I don't even know whether we're going to need Zoom in a year.
Man, we're going to have a new borough president in January, so we don't know what they're going to do.
Exactly.
True.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was just saying, because Will specified that these cameras are specifically for Zoom.
Oh, no, they just have integration with Zoom. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that.
Oh, okay.
So
then my whole thing goes away.
Okay, I put the link actually to the cameras in the chat for everybody. They're called Owl Labs Meeting Owl Pro 360-degree camera, blah, 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 blah. But you can read the specs on them and how they work. But they integrate into like, you know, Zoom meetings or you know, whatever type of meeting. So, you know, if sorry, Rebecca.
Oh no, I was just saying great. So then I think I hope we can all agree that we'll include the cameras and the computers and use the funds from this year's budget.
Yeah, we have to do it before the end of June. Barbara, you have your hand up?
Barbara ready?
Barbara Rudder?
Now, you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I clicked too quickly. It's unmuted, and that's my problem. First of all, Elaine, I'm going to be much more careful of listening and questioning when I don't understand what certain monies were going through, and it was my lacking. So let me apologize and accept what was said. In terms of the website, there's so many things that I think are wrong with the website that we can improve on. As an example, if you sent out a meeting and then we decide to have a meeting that month, somehow nobody knows about it. It's not on your, on your calendar anymore because, people get the link before the first of the month and it's not updated. So there's a lot of things. I suggest this is a budget meeting and not a tech meeting. I suggest that we have a meeting that discusses what are the things we could do to make it better. I never print the calendar. I keep it on my iPhone, which I find much better. I export it when I get it. If there are a couple of meetings I know I'm not going to, I just delete it. I do think it's important for less clicks because I think I think that the public doesn't look carefully at every single meeting to see which one they should go to. So they may see a health seniors meeting. They may not know it's about the safe haven, for instance, because they didn't click into it and realize that it deals with them. So I suggest that we meet, we don't tell Will that we don't like this, we don't like that, but that we get a list of things that we think can work better and see if Will can do the magic or get somebody to do the magic. And that might be part, I don't know if it's part of the budget, that may be somehow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been trying to get a technology meeting on the books with Vanessa. So I'll make sure I'll bring that note to her again, and hopefully we can get something going on that soon.
We must have people that are web designers that can help to do it. And certainly, I know, I mean, part of what my past career, which was a while ago, was to work with websites and, do the business intelligence of seeing what click works and what click doesn't. So we have people that certainly can analyze it. I was a techie in my very early life, but I'm not a techie anymore. I wasn't a techie anymore. I wouldn't know how to do it, but I would know what's wrong with it.
Okay, we should move along because we limited how much time we have. There was a question about will we were going to, because Betty was leaving, hire a new person. Do we have a job description on this new person? And anybody want to make any comments about the new hire?
So based on our available budget, the position we would hire for is a community assistant. I've started working on a job description of it. All of our job descriptions for community assistants, look similar. They would be answering phones, doing constituent service, flyering, and they would take a chunk of our committees, a proportional chunk of like what that we expect from them. So they would probably take over where Murat has been doing the Street Life Committee primarily, which is a very intensive, time-consuming committee. It usually has between 10 and 20 applications a month, not counting renewals that we monitor. So they would probably take over what he's been doing, plus flyering when we go back to in person. We've been doing all of this. And then as we've just sort of discussed, if we're going to be doing virtual streaming of meetings, we will need staff to be at each meeting to do the logistics of streaming. So we would I would feel most comfortable if we had 4 staff members to be able to take on all of that responsibility if we are actually doing in-person, even hybrid, or in-person with live streaming.
Okay, Elaine, you have your hand up? You're muted, I think.
Yeah, Michelle had her hand up first, but I'll go to Elaine.
Elaine, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought our meeting was at 4 and I've got another commitment. 2 things. I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I really don't understand what all of our staff do. And I think it would be important for us to see the job specs and what each staff person is responsible for, what they've been doing, and then look at what the need would be for this other person. You've explained it, but I think we need some written material on all of the staff, a job description. Some people call it specs. And the other thing is to look at the use of time on staff. Everybody says you're busy, but sorry about that. I knew it was coming. That we have a sense of what the staff are actually doing so that we can make sure if we go for a 4th person that we're hiring the right person, and that it fills holes that are not currently being done. I heard what you said, Will. But I'd like to see those two things. And I would only support a fourth person once we understand and have some material to look at. If there is a vote on getting a consultant, by the way, for the website or whatever for the techie, I support that, but I do have to leave and I apologize. I had it down for 4 o'clock. Okay, thank you.
Will you advertise once you have the job description, you'll advertise the position, right?
Of course, yeah. It goes up on the city's website and then out to like Hunter and all of the job boards that exist that we could get it out to.
What's the time period for that we would need to move forward with hiring someone? So the city's fiscal year is almost over. Do we need to do it this fiscal year? Is it something we look for next fiscal year?
It doesn't actually matter. Usually it takes about a month once we post to, conduct all of our interviews. So generally speaking, if I posted it tomorrow, we wouldn't actually be really ready to hire. And we do have to vote on new hires at a full board meeting or a land use meeting. So we wouldn't actually be able to hire until probably at earliest our June land use meeting. But that would, and I think that's actually like a way over optimistic timeline.
And we need a committee to interview. We need people.
Yeah, we have a hiring committee that's made up of our chair emeritus's and our chair, you know what I'm saying, the former chairs of our board and our board officers, and they so this is, I guess I'm telling you based on previous experience of how we've hired in the past. I do first round interviews, then I select the top four-ish candidates, the best candidates, and then we'll arrange, because it was usually very difficult to arrange to get all of the former chairs and all of the board officers into one room together for a 4-hour period, 2-hour period. We would schedule all of those to happen one night, usually like a Friday night, and we would spend the night interviewing each of those applicants, and we would collectively decide whether or not we liked any of them. If the group did not like any of them, which has happened, I was sent back to go find more people, and I found more people, and we did end up hiring. But we do the chair emeritus, the hiring committee group, and then if Alita wasn't able to really be attentive of that meeting or catch that interview, she would usually do like an in-person one-on-one interview, like at a coffee shop. That's final level of interview, and assuming that the hiring committee, that the chair all were in agreement that a candidate was qualified, was going to be good for the board, for everything, we would then recommend that to the board at the next full board or land use meeting, so that the entire board could take a vote. The BP's office won't actually issue the formal offer letter until we have a CB resolution. So we can post it. It wouldn't be until a full CB resolution took place that we could actually hire.
That was some years ago. I don't remember when. There was some lawsuit because somebody was hired without the full board's authorizing it. So that's when they said the whole board have to vote on all positions. I don't remember how that decision was made, but that's what happened. Okay, on this matter, Rebecca, you have your hand up, and
Michelle had her hand up first.
Okay,
Okay, go, Michelle.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. I didn't want it to slip by when we're talking about the special cameras and for Zoom and what we're going to do when we go back. Well, it has to do with budgets. So, and I don't want to lose my train of thought. We had a full board discussion about this, and there was no resolution in my recollection. And the discussion was about if we should have hybrid meetings, once we're able to go back to in-person meetings. I want to make a distinction between a Zoom meeting and YouTube. All of our meetings, whether they were in person or not, were recorded and put on YouTube. So you could watch them.
We're not on YouTube, Michelle.
They weren't. I remember who was filming.
So previously, in previous fiscal years, the city council has a discretionary initiative called gosh, it's been too long. It's like technology initiative, essentially. And we were given money through our former council member, Dan Grodnick, and then through now Keith Powers and Ben Kalos to have WNET stream just our full board meetings. They were incredibly expensive, comparatively. I think they were on the order of like hundreds or thousands of dollars per meeting versus,
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought that was a YouTube.
But that didn't come out of our budget. It just came out of the city council budget.
So now that
Digital Inclusion Initiative. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. So I understand. So that's a whole different thing. But it seems to me the cameras that you're talking about for our purchase. Well, let me tell you what I would like to envision, and then you tell me if that's what we're talking about, because I'm not sure I have it clear. I would like to see our meetings on YouTube so that anybody could watch them the next day, the next week, whenever they wanted. To me, that's a completely different thing than a Zoom meeting after we start meeting in person. I, for one, do not want to see us be on Zoom when we're meeting in person. I don't want to see a hybrid meeting. And the reason is, no matter how smoothly a Zoom meeting goes, and you will and the staff have been incredible in making them go very smoothly, even when we've got three.
I apologize for interrupting, but I think this is an issue that we're not going to, we're getting beyond the purview of this committee. So I agree with you that there's a lot to discuss about whether to do hybrid meetings.
Let me bring it back. Will these cameras that you're talking about be cameras that we can use to get on YouTube?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm asking.
Yes. So they would integrate into a Zoom, and so or whatever, like however the system would look.
What happens if we're in person?
So it's actually what I'll try to explain. Imagine that what you would see on YouTube would be much more akin to what you currently see on YouTube than what you previously saw on YouTube, which was for our full board meetings, which had 3 cameras set up in different spots of the room that would switchboard between different viewpoints, whereas the audience view, the speaker view, like Alita view, essentially the chair view, and then the public speaker, the public session view, right? They had those 3 cameras that would sort of switch between. And now you would just see something much more akin to this, sorry about that, where the camera would switch to the individual speaker at the table, where it would be a zoomed in sort of person view. It wouldn't be an audience view.
And that's what these cameras would do for YouTube?
That's what they would do for YouTube. You would not see an audience view. You would only see the speaker view as it switches from speaker and individual.
Who operates the camera?
The cool thing about those cameras is that they do it on its own. It has microphones built in that spins the camera. It has a 360-degree camera.
Oh, so that's.
And so as long as you're in a 25-foot radius of it, it would catch you. So envisioning the idea that we were at the blood center, you would set that up on the stage, and you would have everybody, just like we would typically do, line up at the microphone, and it would swing over and it would look at them as they're speaking. And then as, say this is transportation, Chuck and Craig are standing at the front of the room, it would swing over to them as they're speaking, or swing over to Marcus Book as he's speaking. The one thing that it would be hard to capture, and we would want to do something where this is why you would need somebody at a computer to do this, is if there's a presentation, you would want to have that presentation on a flash drive as a shared screen, and so that the YouTube would see that, And then as the speaker, it would just look like the what we normally see.
Speaker in the corner. So it's a pretty sophisticated camera. So it's not that expensive, but what you quoted.
Yeah.
It's pretty sophisticated. All right, I just don't want that confused with hybrid meetings. I think there's a lot. That's what I was clarifying.
We really shouldn't be discussing that now. Do people want to take a vote on the hiring of a new person?
Well, you have two speakers left, Rebecca and Barbara.
We may have to go meet again. I can meet Saturday night at midnight if we continue, because we have to get off. Okay.
I promise it's short. I just want us to, this is actually in the vein of moving on. I want to make sure we're clear that about, and we've been updating the spreadsheet, so we now know kind of where the budget is going and how much we have left that is remaining in our PS budget, because there's something that I think should be addressed when we're in a closed session. And I think maybe at some point we should move to that. I just can't bring it up right now.
Okay.
So can we move to the closed session and
Should we vote on hiring the person first?
Well, but I thought we had to have a
We also can't do that. And
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All non-board members? Sorry,
Okay.
Judy.
I'll create a breakout room for all the board members to go.
Tell it. I don't know how to do that.
No, I will. I will do that.
Okay.
Do you need me in that room?
You can be in the room.
No, I don't think you should.
Okay,
Well,
no, okay,
You will be able to chat me if you need me to come into the room.
okay.
But I'm going to create a room. I'll move all the board members over into that. Max and I and, well, I guess,
I
Judy
think
left.
Judy left already, so we.
but we'll
yeah,
still move
but
you over
it has
since
to be.
you probably don't want it recorded and you don't want it live
No,
streamed,
don't.
right?
Correct. Yeah. Can you
And-
maybe promote Rebecca to be like the host, or if Felice can do it, just somebody in,
Yeah.
or is that necessary, or?
It shouldn't be necessary. Not in
Okay.
the breakout room.
Before we move, I just want to make sure that the PS budget that's there, the money left is accurate, because we need that information.
The uncommitted balance.
Or
the
how much?
So I forwarded it, everybody who's on this call, all the board members, information about what the salary range would be, or the potential salary range would be.
No, this is a separate thing.
Got it.
So yeah, all right.
I just want to make sure we have the funds.
Yes. I think I can say all this, and it's not disclosing anything that shouldn't be disclosed. Currently, in our FY21 fiscal budget, there is more than $20,000 worth of personnel services budget that has not been spent and will not be spent on current staff salaries. In the FY22 budget, were things to stay the same, meaning no fourth person and no other changes, there would be a remaining PS budget, just a PS budget, of $43,200.
Okay, that's
All of that is technically publicly accessible information.
Yeah,
That's
can I
perfect.
ask one question in relation to the budget, and Will and Russell should know this. Have we been paying George James? He's been to a lot of our meetings. Do we pay him when he comes to our meetings?
We retained him through a contract previously. Yes.
That never came to the board.
That came through a lead camp signature.
But
There is no bylaw or rule of the city of New York that says how boards should handle spending their money. Technically, I mean, there are comptroller directives of how all city agencies must spend money, but there are no directives of if a bill is worth $5,000, it needs to go to a full board vote. If it's worth $4,000, the board chair can assign. No, none of that exists. The city council adopted a rule based on what you were talking about earlier, that car purchase, that when they gave us discretionary grants for that $42,000 that they gave us for 2 fiscal years, that they gave a rule that said if you're spending over $10,000 of that money, of not of any other type of money, but of that money, you had to have a full board vote. And that was essentially the council's way of protecting against any other community board buying a car or some other, tabloid worthy purchase. George James was retained at a lower number than that, and that's why Alito was capable of just signing off on it.
Felice, what we're talking about, at one point, the community board district manager, I don't know if you were on the board.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so people got a little upset.
So since we only have 45 minutes
Yeah,
left,
we have to move on. So can we go until we can vote on hiring the staff person and then vote on the budget?
Yeah, I'll break you guys out into a breakout room.
And I'll finish my comment there.
Okay, you should see a breakout room. You'll have to click a button to go.
Do I click on join?
Join, yeah. Max, we are still streaming, just letting you know.
Yes, I saw.
Elaine, you're going to see a prompt to go to a breakout room. Rami, I see you joined. The board members are currently in a breakout room for a closed discussion. You can give me a thumbs up that you saw that if you want, but okay, great. Thank you. They will come back out, so you do not have to go away. Just know that it'll be boring until they come back. Police, you should be able to unmute.
Yep.
And now I see Barbara Chalky. Barbara, you can unmute as well.
I think we're ready to move on to a discussion of discretionary funds for the arts.
Okay. Barbara, there you go. Unmute.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay. You want to tell us what the funds are and how that's going to work? The funds for Elita's project, the arts project.
Thanks. Yeah. So basically, the idea is, now that we have an arts committee and we're working on various different art-related projects in the district, it's possible that a need will arise for, funding in connection with some of those initiatives. And so, a lot of what the art committee is focused on doing is bringing actual displays of art and actual performances and things like that. And it's possible that there are going to be, incidental expenses associated with that. So it may be that we need to get some kind of, insurance or something at some point in connection with sort of securing space, or, there's all different kinds of things. I mean, maybe we'll just need to buy some supplies. I mean, maybe we'll, there's various different things that might come up in the course of doing projects like this. And so the question was, in the same way that we had gotten discretionary funding in past years for various other things. So like last year, we had gotten discretionary funding to hire an architect. The request that Alita had made was, could we get discretionary funding? Essentially, could we ask our council members to secure us some discretionary funding that we could use for art projects coming up in the future? And I think it's a great idea. I really like, the fact that we're getting underway with these arts initiatives. I think it's a really nice thing to be doing as everybody's coming back from COVID, and people are going to be out, getting out more, and artists are going to be needing more exposure as well. I think there's a lot of good synergy there. So I think it's a very worthy thing, but I just didn't want to sort of unilaterally approve it. I wanted to give it more consideration. And one thing to consider is, just whether there would be other things that we would want to be asking for discretionary funding for. I'm not aware of anything. I can't, think of anything off the top of my head, but I didn't want to, just unilaterally approve something to the extent that, there's other things to consider and what have you. But I personally think it's a very good idea, but I wanted to just give the committee the opportunity to think about it.
Yeah, that was my concern originally, that there may be other committees, but I don't think there is. So I think I agree. I support it too.
I think Michelle has a question.
Michelle?
Yeah, thanks. In the past, when a committee has had a forum, there were flyers and stuff like that. We had the office do that, or whatever. I mean, where did that money come from? In other words, my concern here is approving.
You spent the money just was from our regular budget on paper.
Exactly. So my concern is approving anything prior to hearing about the projects. I'm assuming that if the art committee is proposing a project, I'm assuming that, like anything else, it has to come to the full board for approval. So if it comes to the full board for approval, and at that point it needs some funding, I think then if it's approved, I think then the first thing we should do is go to our council members, because this is very good PR for them in their district. And this is not something that's going to cost a lot of money. When you're talking about insurance, that's a whole other story, because I'm not sure that the community board has ever been involved in anything that could potentially cause us that kind of liability. In other words, an outside premises. But I would deal with that on an issue by issue basis. I don't think I would feel comfortable on just voting discretionary funds for that particular committee.
So I think the idea is that, now essentially is the time to get discretionary funds. We won't know exactly what, various different items we might want to spend the money on until sort of down the road. But this way, if we ask the council members to get us some discretionary funds in this category, we'll know we have the money, and that'll sort of free us up to do more planning for arts-related initiatives. So that's the idea with asking for it now. It's not tied to specific requests or specific dollar amounts. It's just asking them to secure what
Okay,
they're
but
up to, and that way we know we have.
it's not coming out of the community board 8.
Discretion.
It's a question. Yeah, what we're doing is we're requesting that the council members get
Okay,
us discretionary. When I say discretionary funds, it's discretionary funds from the city council that they're going to allocate to the community board for us to use. So that's what happened with the payment for the architect was in part paid for by additional funding that we got that was discretionary funding from the council members. And so the idea is to do something similar here, where we would be getting additional money from our budget, or sorry, separate from the budget, added to our budget that could be allocated to these arts projects.
So
fine.
do we need to? I'm
Can I
sorry.
just follow up? If you ask them for that money at that time, do you have to assign it to a committee? Do you have to tell them it's for the arts
You have to
committee?
tell them
For
what
this committee?
what it's for. They want to know what it's for. They're not going to just, This
But
is,
can you give them a broad range or a range of topics?
I'm just bringing this up, but first, I had some of the same questions you did originally, but she asked specifically to start off the art project. She specifically asked for us to ask for discretionary funds.
How much are we talking about?
We're not specifying a particular amount. We're just going to try and get what they can give us. Because again, we don't have particular projects in mind yet. It's all sort of perspective. And so there is, essentially we're trying to plan ahead for the possibility that we're going to need these things, and the hope that we'll be able to plan stuff that we can spend some of this money on. And the goal is now, when we have the opportunity to get these discretionary funds, to get it looking ahead to when we, actually are, continuing to plan things that we would spend it on.
I just still want to hone in on this, though. I realize you have to tell them what it's for, of course, and you could give them an example, like, for example, the Arts Committee, but I'm not comfortable in feeling that that's the only committee that could ever get discretionary funds.
Well,
For example, through the Landmarks Committee, Gail and I are putting together a forum. We postponed it because of COVID, because we preferred, it has to do with preservation, and it's about teaching the community about historic windows and the value of preservation of their buildings, all that kind of thing.
good. I like that. It's a good idea.
Yeah, well, and it would have been this year had it not been for COVID, because we felt that it was better to have such a meeting in person. And when we were first planning it, we had no idea that this would be a year and a half later. So I'm hoping that this will happen, if not at the end of 21, that certainly in 22. I don't know what money we'll need for that. I know our aim, we would love to have it in a historic building in the district, whether it be in a church or somewhere else, whether or not that'll be rented, we need rented or donate. I don't know, and I'm perfectly happy to have money go to the Arts Committee, but I just would not like to see it so designated that if any other committee needed it, we would be restrained from offering it.
So we have, I'm sorry to interrupt. We have 7 minutes left before the
We
next.
have to get off because we have another, they delayed their other meeting for us, so we have to get off.
So Russell, what's the time period for requesting the city council? Because they're in the budget cycle now. So what's the time frame that we would need to make this request for discretionary funding if approved?
I'm not sure, Will, do you know?
Now,
Okay.
like
Right away.
actively very soon. We're getting closer and closer to like handshake time. So it means that the council has already started figuring out how they're going to allocate their discretionary funds. The ideal time to have done this would have been closer to the actual timeline for their applications, which would have been by March.
If the
So if we requested it,
it's already done.
so if we requested this, we're not excluded from at some point going back and requesting
We can
discretionary
request as
funding.
much as we want from just, but you're sort of saying this is the project you want over another project for another board.
Well, now,
No, that's what you're saying. That was my original concern of mine, if you remember, Felice. I was concerned about that originally, and now she's bringing up, Michelle's bringing up another point about that. I mean, I'm a little concerned about that.
Well,
but given, no, go ahead, Russell.
One way to think about this potentially is, I think ordinarily the way this has been done in the past, or I think the way that Alita handled this in prior years, was there were requests made to ask for discretionary funds. Alita, as the chair, just approved it, and the request was sent, and that was that. I think this year I wanted to get input from folks before unilaterally doing that, but my inclination is to say yes. And the reason that I wanted to ask the committee is because, to the extent that, we're asking for this and not something else, I wanted to sort of give folks a chance to air other ideas or other things that they think we might want. I think in the absence of other sort of ideas about what we would be requesting funding for, that, I don't see any reason sort of not to make the request for this money, again, in the absence of something else that we would prefer to spend it on. I think that's really, in a way, the question that I'm asking.
We have 4 minutes. Just
I hate to
There are
move.
hands up, and yeah.
So I'll go through, Ed Hartzog has his hand up, Elaine, then Rebecca, then Michelle again, and Barbara Rutter. Go ahead.
I'd like to echo a lot of what Michelle said in terms of locking ourselves in. We're asking for discretionary funds. We're leading people to believe that it's going to be for this particular item. And I don't know how much we're asking for. And just in general, as to this arts project per se, what caught my ear was this possible among many, but the purchase of like insurance and things like that. That's a little something. I would probably.
I don't want to misrepresent Alita's intentions. I mean, I don't know that that's what we would spend it on. And if people do, want to have a stipulation that we don't spend any of it on insurance, if that's the concern, I'm happy with that. I don't think it necessarily has to go to insurance.
And you would also be subject to the spending rules of New York City and the spending rules of the City Council by using discretionary funds.
I get it. So take that out, whatever. I don't mean to distract from the overall argument, which is not in the minutiae here on that per se, opening the door on my own. But the point is, I'm uncomfortable, again, echoing Michelle in terms of this amorphous amount for something. It's just too much sort of unknown here. Just in general, I don't want to set this precedent for this sort of the way that this is being done. So I would be sort of against the idea in general, but I mean, I'm for the arts. So I don't like being put on the horns of this dilemma. Whereas, if you're going sort of against this arts thing, so you're against the arts, but it's okay the way that it's sort of done. I'm very concerned about the process, and I don't want to be process oriented, but there's a reason for it. And just to kind of echo a lot of what Michelle said, in general, notwithstanding the requirements and the limitations and the lawyer stuff as to what we can and cannot do, I'm just talking just in general as to the broad range within which that rubric of what's legal and not spending the funds. I'm uncomfortable just in sort of a general blanket request. And again, just for an arts committee per se, and then locking us in. That's all.
I have a lot of experience in discretionary funding. There are two processes. One, where you have nonprofits applying by the beginning of February, identifying what their needs are. The other way is if the city council person or the borough president wants a certain project done, they can allocate it. The funding for 210 special districts was not a request that the board made. Ben Kalos allocated it and then told us about it, okay? We did not apply. I don't know if it's too late. If Ben or Keith has any funding to do this. And it's a little late in the cycle. The other piece is the city is self-insured. I doubt very much we need insurance because we're a city agency, therefore we're self-insured. So that I think could come off the table, but it's, if right now, if there are funds in the existing budget that need to be spent, I would suggest we allocate some funding to make the art program that's coming up in June a success. And then look at what can go forward and have a discussion with the, you could talk to the city council members now, whether they have any funds that they have not committed yet, because most of that's all done. That's all I want to tell you. I've done this. I've had lots of discretionary funding as the head of a couple of nonprofits.
I had a whole program that was just funded through discretionary funding.
So look, I'm sorry to interject here, but I think as a practical matter, given that the timing of this is that we really, now is the time to ask for discretionary funds. The question is really, do we ask for this or do we ask for something else? And if we don't have something else in mind, it's this or nothing. That's, I think, unless there's some other sort of proposal floating out around, which again, that's sort of why I wanted to discuss this, was to see if folks had other things that they wanted to spend the money on so that we weren't committing to something, absent consideration.
Since we're
we're at the
short
top
on
of
time,
this.
I'll give up my comment.
Okay, since Barbara Rudder hasn't spoken, do you want to go to her first? And we really need to wrap up. I need to get the other meeting started.
All right, I'll just tell you, I have 100 things. You could talk about the Esplanade. We want what's coming in front of this on Wednesday. We want the senior centers to open. We may want to ask help for opening it. There's a million things that
Money
are
for us to spend.
very much part of it that we could ask for discretionary.
Do anybody want to lay this over or table it?
I don't think we have the time to do it. I mean, what I would recommend is requesting discretionary funding, and then setting up a budget process so that for next year we have a more time and a more open process.
If we want this to go through, I think we need a specific project to give them. Truthfully, I don't think just
Look, I don't think this, let me just say this. I don't think this requires a resolution because I think in the past, the way that the requests have been done is it's been done through the chair. So I think frankly,
we didn't know about that.
Okay, all right. Look, I mean, my view would be I can sort of continue to solicit advice
You want to
and
do it that way, yeah.
consent offline if that's okay with folks, and we can, this isn't something that we need to necessarily vote on. It's just something that I wanted to consult with folks about. So I think if we want to just email about additional thoughts about this, I think that's also a perfectly valid way to proceed given the timing that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with that, Russell, at this point.
Okay. The meeting does need to end
I know it
as soon as possible.
We told the next committee, and I have to go on to the next one. So
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. This was longer than I thought it was going to be, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is that a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Yes.
adjourn
Thank you.
before we're thrown off.
Second, et cetera. All right.
All right.